Hi, so the culture that I am going to be talking about today is witches, the culture of witches and witchcraft. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because I find witchcraft extremely interesting. I have seen witchcraft done before, and I've met witches, and I have some friends who are witches. Even though I'm not a witch myself, it's a culture that I've definitely participated in and I find very fascinating. So, a little bit of an overview on witches. Um, Witches are kind of a nature-based spirituality belief system. They have a really strong relationship with nature and using nature's energy to create spells and things like that. A lot of witches also have relationships with deities or gods and goddesses, like they make an offering to them and then the god or goddess gives them something in return, like power, or makes a spell work, or gives them some kind of insight. So, the origin of witches is pretty much unknown historically. It's estimated that witchcraft started around 900 to 700 BC, but that's just an estimate. We know that it was created before biblical times, or at least before the Bible was written, or before Jesus existed. But that's really all we know about the origins. Some of you might know about how heavily persecuted witches have been throughout the centuries. If you know anything about the Salem witch trials, you know that witches were burned, hung, and drowned and killed in other ways for being devil worshippers or sinners. Some of these women were not even witches, they were just suspected of witchcraft. A very sad time in America's history, for sure. Often that is still a misconception of witches, that they believe in Satan or practicing Satanism, which is just not true. They have a very different belief system than the Christian belief system. And so they don't have any beliefs in Christian mythology like Satan. So they cannot be Satan worshippers if they don't believe in Satan. So for the first cultural dimension that I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about individualism and collectivism. This one is interesting when it comes to witchcraft because depending on their belief system, it changes. There are kind of different ways to practice witchcraft and different beliefs within witchcraft, depending on the individual witch. So some witches are in covens, which are like little groups of witches that practice magic together and create spells together, and are considered more powerful when they work together. Also, a lot of witches believe in individual relationships with like deities, gods, and goddesses, and so they aren't in a coven, and it's more of a personal relationship with their magic and their powers. So it really just depends on the witch, on whether they value individualism more or collectivism more, and so it's kind of a little bit of both. The next dimension I'm going to be talking about is uncertainty avoidance. A huge part of witchcraft is uncertainty, whether or not a spell is going to go the way you want it to, whether or not your deity, god, or goddess is going to give you what you need, or how they will give you powers, things like that. There's a lot of uncertainty that comes with witchcraft, and there's a lot of unpredictability, especially when it comes to the individual relationships with the deities and things like that. You don't know how a god or goddess is feeling, or how they'll react to what you ask of them, or how they'll react to your offerings. And so relationships with these gods and goddesses can be pretty rocky and unpredictable. So witches really have to be tolerant of unpredictability and uncertainty because they're constantly surrounded by it. And the last dimension I'm going to be talking about is masculine versus feminine. And I would say that witchcraft is definitely a more feminine culture. usually witches are women. Most of a witchcraft surrounds women, and it's like a more female belief system. Their values are very much rooted in healing other people and helping other people, making sure no harm comes to the people around them. They have a really strong relationship with nature and like using natural things to make remedies and spells and things like that. So definitely more of a feminine culture, definitely more feminine values. So now I'm going to be talking about my interaction with the culture and my process through it and my responses to the culture. So at first, I definitely was resistant to witchcraft and witches. Often we're taught that witches are scary, evil people. We're taught the misconceptions that came from the Salem witch trial era. And so most people are often very scared of witches and believe that witches are people who wish to do you harm. And that was kind of the belief that I had. And then I started doing more research and I started meeting people who had these beliefs and who were witches. And I started to understand what they believed and what their whole belief system was all about. And so my ideas on witchcraft like really changed, and I found a lot of appreciation for their beliefs. I really found respect for their beliefs when I started relating their beliefs to my own and understanding that even though things were a little bit different between me and witches, their beliefs were still respectable and deserved to be respected, and everyone's different and we all deserve to believe in what we want to believe in. And then when I got into high school around that time, I actually not really participated in any spells or anything like that, but I've seen people do spells, and I've kind of started taking aspects of witchcraft and incorporating them into my own life, things like crystals and herbal remedies, things like that. And this kind of ties in to my object, because when I started collecting witchy things, I stumbled into a store that sold items for witches to use during spells, spell books, incense, crystals, things like that, and like little protection charms, things like that. And this lady gave me this, and it's kind of like a protection pendant sort of thing. This is supposed to bring me like good times and protect me from harm and things like that. As you can see, it's a pentagram, and most people associate pentagrams with the devil and things like that, but they really actually have no relation. It's really just like mass media that has convinced us that it has something to do with Satan. Really doesn't. It was just because during the Salem witch trials, any symbols or, language that witches used for spells and things like that, it was considered to be of the devil. So things like pentagrams became symbols of the devil, even though they are not. So that's my little spiel on witchcraft and their culture, and I hope you enjoyed and learned something.